first, response and communications will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to receive testimony on the efforts necessary to ensure a strong and effective federal emergency management agency. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Today's hearing is the second in a series of hearings on the future of FEMA and an effort to help set the next administrator up for success. Earlier this month, the subcommittee received testimony from FEMA's stakeholders to hear firsthand about the critical relationship between FEMA and first responders at the state and local level. FEMA's success is directly related to the relationships the agency has with state and local partners to promote a culture of preparedness within communities. Part one of this series of hearings reinforced the need for an experienced emergency manager to lead FEMA. Today's distinguished and weather-tested witnesses know better than anyone the significant transformation FEMA has made in achieving and maintaining national preparedness and response capabilities over the past 12 years. Both administrators were responsible for implementing about 350 individual requirements enacted by Congress in the post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act. With the tools Congress gave them, they took steps to ensure FEMA developed and implemented the complex national preparedness system made up of federal, state, local, private, and nonprofit emergency management partners. Significant resources have been invested at all levels of government to reach the current level of national preparedness. As we move forward, those in positions of authority have an obligation to build on the critical progress that has been made. This subcommittee has consistently followed FEMA's progress. Without strong leadership in place, FEMA would not have achieved the level of transformation currently in place. The FEMA of 2005 is not the FEMA of 2017, and that is a very good thing. Looking to the future and working with FEMA, its stakeholders, and our colleagues in Congress, it is this subcommittee's intention to ensure the FEMA of 2017 is continuing to make the United States safer and stronger. Those watching this hearing know that the threats to the United States continue to grow and evolve. Since our last meeting, the number of major disasters declarations that were made this year have nearly doubled. We must ensure that the investments we make today will work to better address the threats and hazards we face tomorrow. Whether it is ensuring first responders have the necessary training to prevent a terrorist attack with mass casualties, like we saw in San Bernardino, or notifying communities to prepare for the next Superstorm Sandy, FEMA must remain at the top of its game. We are fortunate to have Administrator Fugate and Administrator Paulson here with us this afternoon. We look forward to hearing their insights and lessons learned that can be shared with the next leader of FEMA. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, my friend, Mr. Payne, for an opening statement that he may have.
Good afternoon. I'd first like to thank Chairman Donovan for holding today's hearing. I'd also like to thank former Administrator Paulson and former Administrator Fugate for being here today, and I don't ever remember such bigger smiles in our last few times in front of each other than now. I wonder why. And also for being here today and subjecting themselves to a congressional hearing, even though after leaving government. Earlier this month, the subcommittee asked various stakeholders to provide their insights on what FEMA is doing well and what issues the next FEMA administrator must address. I was pleased that in general, the stakeholder community had positive things to say about how FEMA is carrying out its emergency preparedness mission and the manner in which it engages with its state, local, and non-governmental partners before, during, and after disaster strikes. Every witness that testified before the panel earlier this month identified FEMA's continued engagement with the stakeholder community as its top priority. Although it is unclear to what degree, if at all, the new administration has engaged with state, local, and non-governmental partners on issues related to disaster preparedness and response, I'm hopeful FEMA's outreach and coordination will continue once the administration has named a permanent FEMA administrator. And I hope that the administration will name a permanent administrator soon. Witnesses also testified regarding the progress FEMA has made, encouraging state and local governments to ensure that the unique needs of children and individuals with disabilities are integrated into emergency planning, training, and exercises. Save the Children in particular lauded FEMA's efforts to tackle the challenges involved in ensuring that emergency plans are designed to accommodate children and express support for making children's technical expert a permanent position at FEMA. On the day of September 11th attacks, I was responsible for student transportation, essentially ensuring that 10,000 children made it home from school safely each day. On that day, my last student did not get home until 11:30 at night because of the attack. And we've made a lot of progress integrating children into disaster planning activities since then, but we must do better. As Save the Children pointed out earlier this month, 80% of the recommendations made by the National Commission on Children and Disasters in 2010 remain open. I commend Administrator Fugate for accepting the FEMA National Advisory Council's recommendations to designate a children's technical expert to ensure that children remain a priority in disaster preparedness response and recovery planning. I hope to work with members of this panel to formally authorize FEMA's children's technical expert this Congress. Once again, I want to thank both of you for being here today, and I look forward to your testimony. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields the remainder of his time. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for any statement that he may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rankin, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of waiting to hear our two former FEMA directors' comments, I'll put my my statement in the record, and just let me thank both of them for their years of service. And I can tell from their looks they're in a better place. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We are pleased to have very distinguished members of the panel today before us on this very important topic. Craig Fugate served as the administrator of FEMA from May 2009 to January 2017. Prior to leading FEMA, he served as director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management. During this time, he served as the Florida State Coordinating Officer for 11 presidentially declared disasters, including the management of $4.5 billion in federal disaster assistance. Administrator Fugate began his emergency management career as a volunteer firefighter, paramedic, and a lieutenant with the Alachua County Fire Rescue. Craig, they put it in phonetic spelling for me. David Paulson served as the administrator of FEMA from September of 2005 to January 2009. He served as administrator of the United States Fire Administration from 2001 to 2005. During this time, he also served as the director of preparedness at FEMA from 2003 to 2004. Additionally, he spent 30 years in the fire service and 9 years as fire chief of Miami-Dade County, Florida, where his responsibilities included the Office of Emergency Management and the Urban Search and Rescue Team. The witnesses' full written statements will appear in the record. I thank you both for attending today and for the input you will have to further this agency to better protect our country. The chair now recognizes Administrator Fugate for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and ranking members. I always thought I was smiling at our hearings. I always thought we had good conversations. even when I was in a bit of a hot seat, but I always enjoyed it. And Mr. Chairman, you said, I think something is important. What are the things that we're currently doing or not doing that we need to codify in legislation? So I want to start off with where we began with the Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act. A lot of people define FEMA by the Stafford Act, and I think that's short-sighted. The real authorization of FEMA came out of the Homeland Security Act as amended. And first of all, it required that the FEMA administrator be a professional, have that background. This is not a job, it's not a good job to do on-the-job training. It's too brutal, and the citizens deserve better. The second thing was, it's all hazards. Most people think of FEMA when you get a declared disaster from the Stafford Act. Yet in my time at FEMA, we supported the USAID's response to Haiti. We supported border and custom protection with unaccompanied children across the southwest border. We supported the Center for Disease Control during the Ebola outbreak. And these were all capabilities that were enabled and authorized by that act, that FEMA can serve as the crisis manager for the federal government, not just in response to states and local governments during disasters. So that's one of the things we've learned is you've invested a lot of money in the organization. We don't always make utilization of it because we define it by natural hazards. Instead of disasters and crisis management require certain skill sets that unless you're doing it frequently, you're not always proficient at it. And so in looking at some of the ways that FEMA was used to support other agencies, this is not about putting FEMA in charge. It's about FEMA in a support role to either a state or a tribal executive or to a lead federal agency. Has a lot of capabilities, and I think we, in times of cutting budgets and looking at how to get better efficiencies, we should not overlook the fact that FEMA should not be defined by the Stafford Act. It should be defined by the all hazards mission as a support agency to either the governors or tribal executives when they request assistance, or federal agencies who may have a lead in a disaster, but may not always have the immediate staffing required to manage that in the onset. Second thing I wanted to, other than Post-Katrina Reform Act, is what we, because when it's really bad, you got to collapse and run as one team. But the first ones there should not be the ones that get bypassed. It's about building support for the locals to the state, and then FEMA's job supporting the state as the locals. But my observation has always been, if they're not talking before disaster, it don't get better during the disaster.
So and Mr. Paulson, I'm going to sort of preempt you, and I apologize. But so what we need to do then is create a circumstance where the first time the sheriff's deputy sees somebody from FEMA isn't the day after the hurricane or the tornado.
We have a saying that that's the worst time to exchange business cards is in the middle of a disaster. You should know these people up front. And it should be coordinated together. In every disaster we have, even at the local level, there's local people, there's state people, there's FEMA people there from all the agencies are at the local command post, making sure we're sharing information. And that's the only way it's going to work.
Is there a metric, and I'm not trying to interrupt you to be rude.
No, it's all right.
Is there a metric by which you can measure the performance of your people in the field? Because here's what I know from life. There's a guy or gal out there who knows all the sheriffs and fire chiefs and, in their area, and there's another one who, but that is so important. I was a member that had the honor of serving on the Virginia Commonwealth Preparedness Board. We had great contingency plans that half the end users didn't know about, which meant we had no plans, right? Is there a metric to measure the efficacy of individuals in sort of making that face-to-face that will be so valuable on the day two?
That's really the role of the local emergency manager, is to make sure that all of those agencies are talking to each other, exercising together. They all know what the plan is. We found that in Hurricane Andrew. That did not happen at the local level or the state level or the federal level. There was really poor communications in place. Our emergency management system just totally collapsed during Andrew, and it fell on the different agencies, particularly the fire department at the time. I think I was the fire chief 3 weeks.
Yeah.
To take on that task. It shouldn't have fallen on the fire department. It should have been at the emergency management level. So that's the key person. That's the kingpin for that local disaster response is that local emergency manager. And then it's up to the state to make sure that we're all these different counties. We're talking to Craig Fudate when he was our state emergency manager, did an outstanding job of making sure that all 67 counties were talking to each other. Even if part of the counties were not affected directly, they would be by moving supplies in and out. So he made sure that every day, twice a day, all 67 counties were on a conference call sharing information.
So you make an excellent point. I got about 40 seconds, and that is that if there are 67 counties and 30 are impacted, the other 37 are very important because they have resources that can be brought to bear, and that communication matters. So then the next question that I have, and this might be ignorance on my part, having been a prosecutor for a long time and working closely with law enforcement, is what are we doing to ensure comms interoperability across jurisdictional lines? We always have a county contract for your 911 or your radio comms or what have you, and there were times where we couldn't talk to state police from this county. Is there anything being done to sort of get to a uniform standard where everybody can actually literally talk to one another?
Right now, it's up to each individual state. There is a program that actually you're funding called FirstNet that's just putting together a statewide, a nationwide emergency management communication system. Now that's in its very infancy right now, but if this plays out like it should play out, we will have a communication where somebody in New Jersey can talk to somebody in California directly.
And we just got to have some net discipline.
Yeah, that's true. But right now, it's just like in the state of Florida, we have a statewide communication system that people can tag into to share information around the state, where law enforcement should be talking to, the fire department should be talking to, EMS should be talking to emergency management. I don't know if you want to explain.
Well, I want to yield back my negative 36 seconds.
And we'll take them. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Before we end, there may have been things that you wanted to express to us that weren't in your written remarks and that we didn't ask you. As a last thought for the next administrator, if that woman or man was sitting here, what do you want to tell them?
You got a lot of great people that work at FEMA, but like all organizations, they will do what will give them greatest success with the least amount of risk. And FEMA cannot be an organization of people who won't take risk, because we're going to get it wrong from time to time. But the problem is, if you're not taking risks because you can't wait for all the facts and information to make decisions in a crisis, action is your preferable strength, not waiting for all the facts. But you will make mistakes. The next administrator has to understand that they need to empower their team to make quick and bold decisions in the opening moments of a crisis when not all the facts are in, and be prepared to take the arrows when things don't go well. Because what I found at FEMA, the more I demanded and pushed my staff to do the things they didn't think were possible, the better they got. But that meant when things went wrong, I had to be prepared to come here before you for the hearings and explain why, not chunk people under the bus or allow staff to take the fall. When we make mistakes for the right reason, you're going to have a hearing. When you make the mistakes for the wrong reason, you fail our citizens, you should be fired.
Thank you. Administrator Paulson?
You know, I just have to echo that too. I had something else I was going to say, but I think that's so important, particularly for the morale inside the organization itself. And this goes for any agency, but we're talking about FEMA, is people are going to do what they think is best based on the information they have at the time. And during Katrina, and probably rightfully so, so I'm not saying that the media was total, but every little thing that FEMA did wrong was on the front page of the Washington Post or the Miami Herald or wherever you happen to be. And sometimes there were decisions that were made for the right reasons that may not have been, the outcome may not have come out like it should have come out. I'll give you an example. We did a yeoman's job of housing 100,000 families. It was the largest migration in the history of this country, most of them in mobile homes and travel trailers, and then we found out we had formaldehyde in them. You know, no fault of FEMA. We're buying them off the lot like you would go buy one, and but we got thrown on the bus for that, and I took the heat for that. We surely did not blame the people buying the mobile homes. So I think it's a matter of letting people make the right decisions that they think at the time, and then like Administrator Fugate said, you know, we'll come here and take the heat for it, and not throw our employees under the bus. Now, if they did something intentionally wrong, well, that's a different issue. But that when they're trying to make the right decision based on in the heat of the moment, sometimes they make mistakes. But we'll handle that part, and we'll take the heat for that, and still support that employee, because that's a good lesson learned.
Thank you both for your valuable testimony and for my fellow members of the committee for their questions. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we ask you to respond to those in writing. Pursuant to the Committee Rule 7E, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thank you both.